"I have lived more than most men, and I am tired, so tired." These were the last words of a 36-year-old man, but he sounded like he was 100. Jack Pickford, brother of Hollywood royalty Mary Pickford, had burned through his entire life in just over 3 decades. Doctors said progressive multiple neuritis, worsened by drinking, killed him. Humphrey Bogart. Hollywood's tough guy bowed out with a soft goodbye. Bogart, dying from esophageal cancer, whispered to wife Lauren Bacall, "Goodbye, kid. Hurry back." He was only 57, his legendary voice cracked by illness. George Reeves. Best known as Superman, Reeves left fans with questions. At a late-night gathering, he told guests, "I'm tired. I'm going back to bed." Minutes later, he was found dead from a gunshot wound. Clark Gable. The King of Hollywood ended quietly. After filming The Misfits, Gable collapsed from a heart attack. His last words to wife Kay Williams, "I'm tired, baby. Let's not get up." Gary Cooper. Gravely ill from prostate cancer, Gary Cooper still showed grace. Speaking to his priest, he replied with calm acceptance, "I'm glad to hear you say that, Father." The Oscar-winning star of High Noon was only 60, remembered for playing strong men who stood tall, even as his body failed. Marilyn Monroe. Hollywood's most iconic star left a cryptic goodbye. Hours before her death from a barbiturate overdose, she told Peter Lawford, "Say goodbye to Pat, say goodbye to the president, and say goodbye to yourself, because you're a nice guy." Montgomery Clift. The actor, known as one of Hollywood's most tortured souls, died at 45 of a heart attack. When a nurse suggested he watch The Misfits, he snapped, "Absolutely not." They were his last words. Judy Garland. The Wizard of Oz legend died at 47 after a barbiturate overdose. To her husband Mickey Deans, she said, "I wanted to be left alone." It was the last cry from a performer who had been pushed since childhood. John Wayne. The Duke's rugged image softened in his last moment. Dying from stomach cancer, Wayne reassured his daughter, Isa, "Of course I know who you are. You're my girl. I love you." He was 72. Steve McQueen. The King of Cool fought mesothelioma, likely from asbestos exposure. After surgery in Mexico, his final words were in Spanish, "Lo tengo, I have it." He died at 50, leaving fans stunned. Natalie Wood. On a yacht trip with Robert Wagner, Natalie Wood voiced a plea, "We're not going to fight tonight, are we?" Hours later, she drowned at age 43. Her death, ruled accidental, has been questioned ever since. John Belushi. Comedy's wild man ended with a quiet request. Hours before his fatal overdose of cocaine and heroin, Belushi told Kathy Smith, "Just don't leave me alone." At 33, the SNL legend who lived at full volume passed in silence. Richard Burton. The acclaimed actor known for Shakespeare and Fiery Romance with Elizabeth Taylor died of a cerebral hemorrhage at 58. To his wife Sally Hay, he whispered, "I'm fine, my angel." Truman Capote. The author of In Cold Blood faded at 59, his body ravaged by liver disease. In his final breath, he uttered, "Beautiful Linda." No one knows exactly who Linda was, though friends speculated about past loves. Rock Hudson. A leading man of the 1950s, Rock Hudson became the first major star to die of an AIDS-related illness. At 59, weakened but dignified, his last words were, "I'm okay, I feel better." Cary Grant. On stage until the very end, Cary Grant suffered a stroke at 82. In his last words to wife Barbara, he said, "I love you, Barbara, don't worry." His farewell was a husband's final comfort. Desi Arnaz. The Cuban-born star of I Love Lucy gave Lucille Ball one last tender exchange before lung cancer took him at 69. When Lucy called, he told her, "I love you too, honey. Good luck with your show." Decades of love and conflict ended with kindness. Sal Mineo. Best known from Rebel Without a Cause, Sal Mineo's life ended violently at 37. Stabbed outside his home, his last words were a panic cry, "Oh God, no! Help! Someone help!" His words captured the shock of a life cut short. Bette Davis. Hollywood's grande dame fought through cancer and strokes, but at 81, she admitted her final exhaustion. To a nurse, she said, "I'm so tired." Known for her sharp wit and fierce independence, Davis ended on a note of weary honesty. Laurence Olivier. The legendary actor faced death with calm resolve. Suffering from kidney failure and prostate cancer, Olivier remarked, "This isn't nearly as bad as I thought." At 82, the master of Shakespeare left life with the same control he brought to the stage. Lucille Ball. The queen of comedy surprised everyone with her odd farewell. After heart surgery, she called out for "My Florida Water." Minutes later, her aorta ruptured. At 77, the woman who made millions laugh went out with words as quirky as her humor. Sammy Davis Jr. The Rat Pack entertainer faced throat cancer with courage. To his wife, his final reassurance was, "I'm fine." He wasn't. He died soon after at 64. Freddie Prinze. At only 22, Chico and the Man star Freddie Prinze left a note saying, "I must end it. I will be at peace." Soon after, he fatally shot himself. Prinze had skyrocketed in comedy but battled depression behind the fame. Charlie Chaplin. On Christmas Day, the 8-year-old film legend faced death with wit. A priest told him, "May the Lord have mercy on your soul." Chaplin answered, "Why not? After all, it belongs to him." He died of natural causes at his Swiss home. Elvis Presley. The King of Rock left his fiancée Ginger Alden with everyday words, "I'm going to the bathroom to read." Hours later, Elvis collapsed and died at 42 of a heart attack tied to heavy prescription drug use. Bing Crosby. Crosby wrapped up a golf game in Spain with cheer. "That was a great game of golf, fellas. Let's go have a Coca-Cola." Seconds later, he collapsed from a heart attack at 74. George Burns. At 100, Burns was still cracking lines. His last words were filled with love. "I'm going to see Gracie." He was speaking of his wife and comedy partner Gracie Allen, who had died decades earlier. Gene Kelly. The Singin' in the Rain star, weakened by strokes, summed up his life with pride. "I never want to be anyone else." At 83, Gene Kelly held no regrets. He had changed musicals forever with athletic dancing and charisma. James Stewart. At 89, the It's a Wonderful Life actor whispered to his family, "I'm going to be with Gloria now." He was referring to his late wife who had died 3 years earlier. Stewart soon passed from a heart attack caused by a pulmonary embolism. George C. Scott. The Oscar-winning star of Patton died at 71 from a ruptured aortic aneurysm. His final words, "I'm so tired." Known for his temper, intensity, and booming screen presence, Scott ended quietly, stripped of the fire that had defined him. Roddy McDowall. The Planet of the Apes actor left life with kindness. Battling lung cancer, he assured a friend at his bedside, "I'm all right, darling." He died at 70. Known for warmth and loyalty, McDowall's words showed his instinct to comfort others even as he slipped away. Frank Sinatra. Old Blue Eyes died the way he lived, blunt and unfiltered. During a fatal heart attack at 82, Sinatra admitted, "I'm losing it." Those 3 words became his last line. The man who sang "My Way" left without illusions, closing out one of the most legendary lives in show business history. Phil Hartman. The SNL comedian left his wife a casual note before bed, "I'll be back, Phil. Love you." Hours later, he was fatally shot in a murder, suicide. At 49, Hartman's final words were tender, never knowing they would be his last. Joe DiMaggio. The Yankee Clipper, 84, died of natural causes but not before saying, "I'll finally get to see Marilyn." He had remained devoted to Marilyn Monroe decades after their short marriage, even sending flowers to her grave. Walter Matthau. The comic great died at 79 of a heart attack. His final words were repeated 3 times. "I knew it, I knew it, I knew it." Nobody can say what he meant, but it fit Mathau's sharp wit and sardonic personality. Jack Lemmon. The Oscar-winning star of Some Like It Hot faced death with dry honesty. Fighting cancer at 76, he told a friend, "This is it, kid." Lemmon had charmed audiences with humor and heart for decades. Richard Harris. Known for Camelot and later Harry Potter, Harris went out with a joke. Dying from Hodgkin's disease at 72, he told nurses, "It was the food." His wit held even in the hospital. The Irish actor had lived hard, drank hard, and entertained millions. Bob Hope. At 100, comedy legend Bob Hope was asked where he wanted to be buried. He answered, "Surprise me." Days later, pneumonia claimed him. It was the perfect punchline from a man who had delivered laughs for nearly a century. Charles Bronson. The tough guy actor who headlined Death Wish showed resilience in his final words. Fighting pneumonia and Alzheimer's complications at 81, he said, "I'm still holding on." Bronson had spent his career playing men who never quit. John Ritter. The Three's Company star collapsed suddenly from an aortic dissection at 54. To his wife, Amy Yasbeck, he signed "I love you" in American Sign Language. Ritter's final message was tender and simple, just like the warmth he brought to his comedy roles. Marlon Brando. One of Hollywood's most complex stars ended with paranoia. Suffering from pulmonary fibrosis and heart failure at 80, Brando muttered, "The paparazzi are after me." The actor who transformed cinema with The Godfather and A Streetcar Named Desire left with suspicion and unrest. Ossie Davis. Actor and activist Ossie Davis died at 87 of natural causes. His last words were everyday and warm, "I'll be right there." Spoken just before his passing, they carried the same kindness he showed throughout his life and career. Don Knotts. The beloved Andy Griffith Show actor faced lung cancer with a comedian's edge. His last words were, "Where's the punchline?" Knotts, 81, had made his career out of awkward humor and bumbling charm. Even as he faced death, he looked for the joke. Paul Newman. The Hollywood icon, race car driver, and philanthropist died at 83 of lung cancer. Newman's last words were dignified, "It's been a privilege." They summed up a career that spanned decades and a life marked by giving back. Heath Ledger. The 28-year-old actor's final words to his sister were haunting. "I just need to get some sleep." Hours later, he died from an accidental overdose of prescription drugs. Ledger had just finished his Oscar-winning role as the Joker in The Dark Knight. Harvey Korman. The comic actor from The Carol Burnett Show faced complications from an aneurysm at 81. His last request was lighthearted, "Tape Seinfeld for me." Even as his health failed, he was thinking of television comedy. Patrick McGoohan. The star of The Prisoner and Braveheart left life with a knowing remark. Dying of natural causes at 80, he said, "I knew it." Those three words fit an actor known for mystery and intelligence. Farrah Fawcett. The Charlie's Angels icon passed from cancer at 62. In her last moment, she said one word, Redmond. It was the name of her son, Redmond O'Neill, who had struggled with addiction and legal trouble. Michael Jackson. In his doctor's care, Jackson asked for more of the anesthetic propofol by calling it milk. His last words were, "More milk." Hours later, the king of pop died at 50 from overdose. Patrick Swayze. The Dirty Dancing star battled pancreatic cancer with courage. At 57, his last words to his wife, Lisa Nemi, were simple, "I love you." He had been married for 34 years, a rare Hollywood love story. Brittany Murphy. The 32-year-old actress collapsed at home and told her mother, "Mom, I'm dying. I love you." Hours later, she was gone from pneumonia complicated by anemia and drug factors. Her final words carried shock, fear, and love all at once. Tony Curtis. The Some Like It Hot star was 85 when he suffered a fatal heart attack. His last words were plain, "I don't feel so good." Curtis had lived through wild Hollywood decades, a string of marriages and health battles. Leslie Nielsen. The master of deadpan comedy went out with a joke. At 84, battling pneumonia, his last words were, "Let her rip," known for Airplane. And The Naked Gun, Nielsen spent decades making audiences laugh with silliness. Elizabeth Taylor. At 79, the Hollywood icon died from heart failure. Her last words were reassuring. "I'll be fine." For a star who had battled illness for decades, the remark was classic, Taylor strong, brave, and a little defiant. She left the world with calm dignity, still playing the role of a fighter. Peter Falk. The Columbo star died at 83 from pneumonia linked to Alzheimer's. To his daughter, he said warmly, "I love you, kid." Falk had built his career on a gruff detective with a heart. Ernest Borgnine. The Oscar-winning actor of Marty and McHale's Navy died at 95 from kidney failure. His final words were uplifting, "You're the best." Borgnine had a career of tough guy roles, but was known for a big smile off-screen. Peter O'Toole. The Lawrence of Arabia legend died at 81 after battling stomach cancer. His last words were, "This is madness, isn't it?" O'Toole had lived hard, drank harder, and delivered towering performances. Even at the end, he saw the absurdity of it all. Paul Walker. The Fast and Furious star left with casual words before tragedy. At 40, he told friends, "We'll be back in 5 minutes." Minutes later, the car he rode in crashed, killing him instantly. Robin Williams. At 63, battling Lewy body disease, Williams said to his wife, "Good night, my love." Hours later, he took his own life. The comedian who gave the world boundless laughter left with tenderness. Mickey Rooney. At 93, Rooney's last words were steady, "I'll be all right." He had lived through 9 marriages, classic films, and near a century of Hollywood history. He passed of natural causes, still working almost to the end. Philip Seymour Hoffman. The Oscar-winning actor died at 46 from a heroin overdose. Before his final hours, he told someone close, "I'll call you later." The everyday line became haunting after his sudden death. Leonard Nimoy. The Star Trek legend's last public words came in a tweet, "A life is like a garden, LLAP. Live long and prosper." He died at 83 from COPD. Nimoy had given fans decades of wisdom through Spock, and his farewell read like poetry. David Bowie. Facing liver cancer in secret, Bowie left a line that captured his spirit. "Music has been my doorway of perception and the house that I live in." At 69, the artist who reinvented himself endlessly summed up his life in one sentence. Joey Feek. The country singer, half of Joey plus Rory, died at 40 from cervical cancer. Her last words to husband Rory were, "I love you." She had documented her cancer fight with openness, inspiring many. Alan Rickman. The Harry Potter and Die Hard star, suffering from pancreatic cancer at 69, spoke softly to his wife, "It's all right, darling. It's all right." Known for his sharp voice in villainous roles, Rickman ended with reassurance, not menace. Gene Wilder. The star of Willy Wonka and Young Frankenstein faded at 83 from Alzheimer's complications. To family, his last words were, "I trust you." Wilder had spent his career mixing comedy with kindness. Carrie Fisher. At 60, the Star Wars icon suffered cardiac arrest on a flight. Her last words were heartbreaking. "I want to go home." Fisher had lived boldly, writing and speaking about her struggles with addiction and mental health. Debbie Reynolds. Just one day after her daughter, Carrie Fisher, died, Reynolds suffered a fatal stroke at 84. Her last words were, "I want to be with Carrie." The Singin' in the Rain star had lived through Hollywood's golden age. Bill Paxton. The actor known for Twister and Aliens died at 61 from a stroke after heart surgery. His final words to his wife and kids were, "Love you." Paxton had spent a career in adventurous roles, but his last moment was grounded in family. David Cassidy. The Partridge Family teen idol died at 67 from organ failure. His last words carried regret. So much wasted time. Cassidy had lived through fame, addiction, and family troubles. In the end, he admitted what he couldn't change. Burt Reynolds. The Smokey and the Bandit icon, known for his swagger, died of a heart attack at 82. His final words were about lost love. She was the love of my life. Many believed he was speaking of Sally Field, his longtime on and off partner. Doris Day. The singer and actress died at 97 from pneumonia. Her last words were warm and simple, I love you. Day had lived a long, private life after decades as America's sweetheart. At the end, she didn't talk about her career or fame. Luke Perry. The Beverly Hills 90210 star died at 52 after a massive stroke. His final words to loved ones were, I love you. Known for his charm on screen, Perry left with the most universal phrase of all. Naya Rivera. The Glee star drowned while boating with her young son. As the boat drifted, she cried out, help! She had managed to save her son before disappearing underwater. Rivera died at 33, her last word reflecting a mother's instinct to protect. Kirk Douglas. The Hollywood legend lived to 103. His last words to son Michael were tender. I love you too. After decades of iconic roles, from Spartacus to Lust for Life, Douglas left with the same humanity he brought to his characters. Max von Sydow. The Swedish actor, known for The Exorcist and The Seventh Seal, died at 90 of natural causes. His last words were calm. I'm ready. A performer who often played men facing fate, von Sydow embraced his own with dignity. Sean Connery. The first James Bond, who later became a respected elder statesman of film, died at 90 from pneumonia and heart failure. His last words were, It's been wonderful. Connery left life as he lived it with charm and finality. Chadwick Boseman. The Black Panther star kept his cancer battle private. In his last days, he said to a friend, It broke me, man. We made a difference in his life. He was 43. Boseman's final words showed his heart was on others, not himself. Christopher Plummer. The Sound of Music actor died at 91 after a fall caused a head injury. His final word was, Elaine, the name of his wife. Plummer's career lasted 7 decades, but his farewell was not about film. Sidney Poitier. The trailblazing Oscar winner died at 94 from heart failure. His last words were full of grace. Thank you. Poitier had broken barriers for black actors in Hollywood. Angela Lansbury. The Murder, She Wrote star died at 96 of natural causes. Her last words were firm. That's enough now. Known for a long and varied career, Lansbury closed life on her own terms. Her farewell carried finality and control, much like the commanding women she often played. Olivia Newton-John. The Grease star battled breast cancer for decades. In her final moment, she whispered to daughter Chloe, My sunshine. She died at 73, remembered for her bright smile and voice. Betty White. Just weeks before her 100th birthday, Betty White died from a stroke. Her last word was Alan, the name of her late husband, Alan Ludden. The beloved star of Golden Girls had never stopped speaking of him. Angus Cloud. The Euphoria star died at 25 from a drug overdose. His last words to his mother were, I love you, Mama. The rising actor had struggled after his father's death. His farewell was raw, heartfelt, and devastatingly young. Matthew Perry. The Friends actor was 54 when he died from ketamine overdose with drowning. His last known words were dark, shoot me up with a big one. Perry had been open about his struggles with addiction. His farewell was painful, showing how relapse haunted him to the end. Some of the old-time Hollywood celebrities were into stuff you wouldn't believe, from having weird obsessions with scat
It is Austin.
to something as bizarre as an irrational fear for the color purple. There is no denying the fact that most of what you're about to be exposed to make absolutely no sense. Charles Lawton's weird diet. In his memoir, Full Service, My Adventures in Hollywood and the Sex Lives of the Stars, Scotty Bowers claims to have either slept with or arranged sexual liaisons for hundreds of the best-known celebrities during Hollywood's golden age. One of the most shocking stories involves British actor Charles Laughton. But that's not all. According to Bowers, Laughton once asked him to bring over a young male guest while his wife was out. When Bowers and the young man arrived, Laughton began making a sandwich. He carefully sliced up lettuce and tomatoes, arranged them on sourdough bread, added a bit of lemon juice, and sprinkled some salt and pepper. This is where it gets interesting. After a few minutes of prep work, Laughton took the bread slices in one hand, picked up a pot with the other, and asked the young man to follow him into the bathroom. But what happened next will shock you. Here's what Bowers describes. Charles was the first to return. He put the plate with the bread slices on the kitchen table. I could see that the lettuce and tomatoes had been lightly smeared with a light brown substance. Seconds later, Ted appeared in the kitchen. His erection was gone, and he was looking decidedly sheepish, perhaps even a trifle embarrassed. I stared at him curiously, and he pulled a face, hoping that Charles wouldn't notice. He pointed at the bread slices on the plate and then lightly patted his backside. And then, believe it or not, Laughton ate the sandwich. Ronald Reagan's obsession with young virgins. Ronald Reagan is often remembered more for his political career than his time in Hollywood, but back in the 1940s and 50s he was one of Tinseltown's leading men. But that's not all. One of the most cringe-inducing rumors about Reagan's Hollywood days comes from his co-star in the 1950 drama Louisa, Piper Laurie. She claims that the future GOP icon took her virginity when he was 39 years old, and she was just 18. But what happened next will shock you. In her memoir, Laurie writes that Reagan first seduced her on the set of their film Louisa, where he played her father. At first, Reagan seemed like a true gentleman. He even asked Laurie's mother for permission to take her on a date. Sounds charming, right? But instead of the glamorous evening Laurie had imagined, Reagan took both her and her mother to his house, where he cooked hamburger steak and salad. This is where it gets interesting. After dinner, things took a strange turn. Reagan led Laurie back to the bedroom. According to her, the actor was an insensitive show-off in bed. He bragged about how long he'd been erect, 40 whole minutes, and how much his condom had cost. But that's not all. Laurie also recounts that Reagan was far from a considerate lover. Not only did he fail to pleasure her, but when she mentioned her lack of an orgasm, his response was harsh and critical. According to her, he said, "There's something wrong with you that you should fix." Howard Hughes's extreme obsession with hygiene. Howard Hughes, the brilliant yet enigmatic tycoon, had a mind that worked in extraordinary ways. His achievements in aviation, film, and business were nothing short of legendary. But alongside his brilliance, there was a peculiar and relentless obsession that dominated his life: cleanliness. Imagine a man so consumed by the fear of germs that he would lock himself away in dark rooms for days, sometimes even weeks. Hughes turned his lavish homes into fortresses of solitude, meticulously sealed to keep out any potential contamination. The windows were often covered, creating a gloomy, almost eerie atmosphere, as if he were living in a perpetual twilight. Hughes's hand-washing routine was nothing short of ritualistic. Picture this. He would wash his hands repeatedly, scrubbing them until they were raw and sometimes even bleeding. It wasn't just a quick rinse. It was a painstaking process, as if he were trying to scrub away invisible threats. His fear of germs was so intense that he believed even the slightest contact could lead to illness or infection. But Hughes's obsession didn't stop at hand-washing. He went to extraordinary lengths to avoid human contact altogether. For instance, if he had to meet someone, he would often communicate through notes or intercom systems, avoiding face-to-face interactions. He would use tissues to touch objects and had a meticulous system for handling everyday items to ensure they remained uncontaminated. Hughes's peculiarities extended to his instructions to staff and associates. He once demanded that all canned food be meticulously washed and scrubbed before opening. Imagine the bewilderment of his staff as they followed these bizarre instructions, knowing that any deviation could trigger one of Hughes's infamous outbursts. Even when he was flying, Hughes couldn't escape his fears. His custom-built planes were designed with his germophobia in mind. He often flew alone or with minimal crew, ensuring that the aircraft remained as sterile as possible. The irony of an aviation pioneer afraid of the very air he conquered is striking, isn't it? Hughes's obsession with cleanliness and germs was a constant battle in his mind. Despite his towering intellect and achievements, he was trapped by his own fears. This relentless battle between his rational, inventive side and his irrational, obsessive side created a fascinating yet tragic figure. The man who soared to great heights in both the literal and metaphorical sense was, in many ways, grounded by his own mind. Mae West's astrology obsession. Mae West, a name synonymous with boldness and wit, was a star who dazzled both on and off the screen. But behind her larger-than-life persona and sultry quips lay a fascination that guided many of her choices: astrology. Mae West was deeply obsessed with astrology. This wasn't just a casual interest or a passing fancy, it was a central pillar of her decision-making process. Imagine a woman who, despite her confidence and unshakable self-assuredness, would not make any major life decisions without first consulting her astrologer. Whether it was a career move, a personal relationship, or even the timing of her day-to-day activities, the stars had to align for Mae. Her belief in astrology was so profound that it influenced her creative work. She wrote a play called The Constant Sinner, which was steeped in astrological themes. The narrative wasn't just a backdrop for her characters. It was interwoven with the celestial movements and zodiac signs that Mae believed so deeply in. This wasn't just art imitating life. It was life, love, and destiny dictated by the cosmos. Think about the confidence and assertiveness Mae West exuded in every role she played and every public appearance she made. Now imagine that same woman, with all her bravado, quietly consulting her astrologer in private, seeking guidance from the alignment of planets and stars. It's a striking contrast, isn't it? The idea that such a powerful figure would defer to celestial charts and predictions adds a fascinating layer to her already complex persona. Astrology wasn't just a hobby for Mae West, it was a way of life. She saw the patterns and signs as a roadmap, helping her navigate the tumultuous landscape of Hollywood and her personal life. This deep-rooted belief in the stars provided her with a sense of control and direction, a way to make sense of the often unpredictable nature of fame and fortune. Marlene Dietrich and collecting men's clothes. Beyond her screen persona, Marlene had an intriguing obsession that set her apart from her contemporaries, a fascination with men's clothing. This wasn't just a passing fancy or a quirky interest. It was a profound passion that influenced both her personal life and her public image. Dietrich didn't merely collect men's clothing, she wore it with a sense of ease and confidence that challenged the norms of her time. In an era when women were expected to adhere to strict fashion conventions, Dietrich's choice to don suits, trousers, and tailored shirts was nothing short of revolutionary. Picture her walking into a Hollywood event in a perfectly fitted tuxedo, her hair meticulously styled, and her makeup flawless. The image was striking and unforgettable, making a powerful statement about gender and fashion. She was one of the first women to popularize androgynous fashion in Hollywood. Her style wasn't about rejecting femininity, but about embracing a broader spectrum of identity. By wearing men's clothing, Dietrich played with societal expectations, blending masculinity and femininity in a way that was both provocative and liberating. She made it clear that clothing was an expression of self, not a strict adherence to gender norms. Dietrich's fascination with men's clothing went beyond the surface. She appreciated the craftsmanship, the structure, and the way these garments allowed her to move and present herself. Collecting these pieces became a hobby, a form of self-expression, and a way to assert her individuality. Imagine her private wardrobe, filled with an array of perfectly tailored suits, each piece carefully chosen and cherished. Her influence extended far beyond her personal collection. Dietrich's androgynous style inspired countless designers and fashion enthusiasts, paving the way for future generations to explore and embrace non-traditional fashion choices. She wasn't just a style icon. She was a pioneer who challenged the fashion industry's rigid boundaries. Peter Sellers' obsession against the color purple. Most people have typical fears like heights, snakes, or spiders, but Peter Sellers, he had a bizarre terror of the color purple. Now, Sellers' eccentricity wasn't the lovable, bumbling kind he often portrayed in his roles. It was far more chaotic and disturbing, making him a difficult person to be around. On film sets, Sellers was infamous for his explosive outbursts. Imagine him in a fit of rage, yelling at his wives, smashing dishes, and even brandishing a shotgun to vent his anger. His tantrums didn't stop there. He clashed with directors and producers, despite their higher status, and would often get lower-level staff fired if they crossed him. His erratic behavior was compounded by his vague racism and intense superstitions. One superstition in particular involved the famed director Vittorio De Sica. While they were working on After the Fox, Sellers saw De Sica berate a script girl for wearing purple. The director ominously declared that purple was the color of death. This statement profoundly impacted Sellers, who became convinced that the color purple could kill. From then on, Sellers' fear of purple dominated his actions. Any time he encountered the color, he'd fly into a panic, throwing tantrums and insisting it be removed. This irrational fear added yet another layer of unpredictability to an already volatile personality, making life around him a constant challenge. Charlie Chaplin's obsession with younger women. Charlie Chaplin, the legendary actor, filmmaker, and comedian, known for his iconic character, the Little Tramp, also had a much darker side to his personal life. Beyond the silver screen, Chaplin's relationships were the subject of much controversy, largely due to his well-known obsession with very young women. This fixation shaped his personal and professional life in ways that continue to spark debate. Chaplin's first marriage was to Mildred Harris in 1918, when he was 29 and she was just 16. Their relationship began when Harris was only 15, highlighting the significant age difference and Chaplin's preference for much younger partners. The marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years, but it set a precedent for Chaplin's future romantic endeavors. Following his divorce from Harris, Chaplin embarked on a series of relationships with teenage girls. His second marriage was to Lita Gray, who was 16 when they started their relationship and 18 when they married in 1924. Chaplin was 35 at the time. Their union was fraught with difficulties from the start. Gray's youth and inexperience clashed with Chaplin's controlling nature, leading to a tumultuous relationship that ended in a highly publicized and acrimonious divorce. The divorce proceedings revealed many sordid details about Chaplin's behavior, further cementing his controversial reputation. Despite the scandal, Chaplin continued to pursue young women. His third marriage was to Paulette Goddard, a rising star in Hollywood, who was 21 when they met, and Chaplin was 47. Though their marriage was kept relatively private and the age gap was not as stark as in his previous relationships, the pattern of significant age differences persisted. Chaplin's fourth and final marriage was to Una O'Neill, the daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill. Una was just 18 when she married Chaplin, who was 54 at the time. This marriage, despite the age gap, proved to be the most stable and enduring of Chaplin's life. They remained together until Chaplin's death in 1977, and they had 8 children. Una's unwavering support and devotion seemed to bring Chaplin a semblance of the stability that had eluded him in his previous relationships. His preference for young women was not limited to his marriages. He was known to have numerous relationships with teenage girls throughout his life, often starting when the girls were still minors. This behavior, while not uncommon in the early 20th century, drew significant criticism and legal challenges. In one notable case, Chaplin faced a paternity suit from actress Joan Barry, who was 23 years younger than him. The case, which included allegations of coercion and manipulation, was widely covered by the media and further tarnished Chaplin's public image. The controversy surrounding Chaplin's relationships with young women has led to a complex legacy. On one hand, he is celebrated as a genius of early cinema, whose contributions to film and comedy are unparalleled. On the other hand, his personal life raises uncomfortable questions about the dynamics of power and exploitation. Chaplin's behavior reflects the broader societal attitudes of his time, where older men often pursued younger women, sometimes with dire consequences. Gloria Swanson's obsession with health and fasting. Gloria Swanson, one of Hollywood's most glamorous and enduring stars, was not only known for her striking beauty and acting prowess, but also for her intense dedication to health foods and fasting. Decades before the wellness industry became mainstream, Swanson was a pioneer in the realm of health and nutrition, turning her lifestyle into a fervent obsession that shaped her daily routines and public persona. Swanson's journey into the world of health foods and fasting began at a time when processed foods were becoming increasingly popular in America. Rejecting this trend, she delved into natural and organic eating habits, believing that what she consumed had a direct impact on her overall well-being and longevity. Her approach to diet was meticulous and uncompromising. She scrutinized every ingredient, ensuring that her meals were not only nutritious but also free from any artificial additives or preservatives. Her commitment to healthy foods extended beyond just eating organic produce. Swanson embraced a diet rich in raw vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, long before such dietary choices became fashionable. She was particularly fond of juicing, often preparing fresh vegetable and fruit juices to maintain her energy and vitality. This dedication to a clean diet was not merely a fad for Swanson. It was a deeply ingrained lifestyle choice that she believed was essential for sustaining her health and beauty. In addition to her strict dietary habits, Swanson was a firm believer in the benefits of fasting. She would often embark on long fasts, abstaining from food for extended periods to cleanse her body and mind. These fasts were not just about physical health. Swanson saw them as a way to achieve mental clarity and spiritual renewal. Her fasting routines were rigorous, sometimes lasting several days, during which she would consume only water or freshly squeezed juices. This practice was unconventional and even controversial at the time, but Swanson was unwavering in her belief in its benefits. Swanson's obsession with health foods and fasting was also evident in her social interactions and public appearances. She often spoke about her dietary practices, sharing her knowledge and experiences with others. She became an advocate for healthy living, encouraging those around her to adopt similar habits. Her influence extended to her close circle of friends and colleagues in Hollywood, many of whom were inspired by her dedication and began to explore healthier lifestyles themselves. Her commitment to health was not without its challenges. Swanson faced skepticism and criticism from those who viewed her practices as extreme or unnecessary. However, she remained steadfast, confident in the knowledge that her choices were beneficial. Her dedication to health and wellness was a testament to her discipline and determination, qualities that also defined her illustrious career. Swanson's approach to health was holistic. She believed in the interconnectedness of physical, mental, and emotional well-being. This belief guided her lifestyle choices, from her diet and fasting routines to her emphasis on regular exercise and stress management. She practiced yoga and meditation, long before these practices became popular in the West, as part of her daily regimen to maintain balance and harmony in her life. Her obsession with health foods and fasting also influenced her work. Swanson often took on roles that reflected her personal beliefs, portraying characters who embodied strength, resilience, and a sense of well-being. Her off-screen persona, as a health-conscious and disciplined individual, became an integral part of her public image, distinguishing her from many of her contemporaries.
Not every lie in Hollywood was whispered. Some were typed, notarized, and filed. These death certificates don't just record a date, they reveal everything no one dared say out loud. The heart failure wasn't natural. Jean Harlow was one of MGM's biggest stars in the 1930s. But her death certificate left more questions than answers. It said acute nephritis, a vague term for kidney failure. What it didn't say was how fast she declined and how badly things were handled behind the scenes. She collapsed on set in May 1937. At first, doctors blamed it on the flu. Then it was gallbladder trouble. She was swollen, couldn't keep food down, and her breath smelled like ammonia, an obvious sign of kidney issues. Still, no one got her to a specialist. MGM reportedly didn't want bad press. They downplayed her condition. By the time she was finally hospitalized, it was too late. Her kidneys were shutting down and fluid was flooding her lungs. She passed away just days later. The official record listed heart failure and uremia caused by nephritis, but experts later said her symptoms fit a treatable infection. She didn't need to die at 26. Stomach lined with acid burns. Thelma Todd was found slumped in her car, parked inside a garage near Pacific Palisades. The official cause: carbon monoxide poisoning. But the death certificate included something the headlines missed: damage to her stomach lining from acid exposure. Todd had spent the weekend partying. Witnesses said she seemed fine when she left, but hours later, her body was discovered. The garage belonged to her ex's wife, which fueled rumors. Some suspected foul play. Others pointed to accidental death after falling asleep with the engine running. No alcohol was found in her system, no bruises, just the gas and the acid. The certificate listed accidental death, but multiple doctors questioned why a healthy woman would sit in a running car, fully dressed, in freezing weather. And where did the acid come from? Bruising hours before overdose. Carol Landis was found unresponsive in her Brentwood home. The cause on the certificate: overdose. But the full report noted something unusual: faint bruising on both wrists and upper arms. No one could explain it. She had just spent the evening with actor Rex Harrison, who was married at the time. Landis reportedly begged him not to leave her. After he went home, she wrote several notes, only one of which made it to police. The others disappeared. The official story said she took sleeping pills late that night, but her certificate recorded lividity and rigor that didn't match the timeline. Some believe Harrison waited hours before calling for help. The bruises weren't deep, but they were fresh. The coroner couldn't say if they were defensive or accidental. Either way, they weren't consistent with someone just lying down and going to sleep. Liver weighed almost double. Ernie Kovacs died in a car crash. He lost control of his Chevy Corvair in the rain and slammed into a utility pole. The crash was instant, but his death certificate included something unrelated to the accident. His liver was massively enlarged, nearly double the normal size. The report listed cirrhosis suspected, which suggested years of heavy alcohol use. Friends later admitted he drank daily, often on set, but no one had talked about long-term damage until that form came out. His widow, Edie Adams, insisted alcohol played no part in the crash. Toxicology showed no drugs or alcohol in his system at the time of death, but the liver condition revealed a deeper issue. He had been hiding serious health problems, even from those closest to him. There was no foul play, no scandal, just a one-car wreck in the rain. But that one line on the certificate, chronic liver disease, noted, quietly changed how people saw him. 3rd degree, burns after crash. Jane Mansfield died instantly when her car slammed into the rear of a slowed tractor trailer outside New Orleans. The top of the vehicle was sheared off, killing all 3 adults in the front seat. Her children, asleep in the back, survived with minor injuries. Early news reports claimed she'd been decapitated. That wasn't true. The coroner later clarified the cause of death as crushed skull with severe brain trauma. Her head injuries were catastrophic but not surgical separation. A wig was found yards from the crash site, which likely fueled the false rumors. The press ran with it, but the official report stayed clear. She suffered multiple skull fractures, massive facial trauma, and instant loss of life. There were no burns, no fire, and no explosion. Just the full force of a steel truck hitting a low-sitting car at highway speed. The accident also prompted a nationwide push for truck underride guards, the safety bars now common on trailers. Morphine level off the charts? Judy Garland's death certificate listed barbiturate overdose, but the toxicology notes told a deeper story. The morphine level in her blood was higher than the known fatal range. Her body had built such a high tolerance, it blurred the line between survival and collapse. She had a long history of pill use, first given stimulants as a teenager by the studio. Over time, she needed more to sleep, more to wake up, more to get through a day. Her house in London was quiet that morning when her husband found her. Too quiet. The coroner said the overdose wasn't deliberate. Her liver and kidneys were already struggling, and the medication just pushed them over the edge. The certificate noted chronic malnutrition and organ stress, not surprising for someone who had lived on pills and cigarettes for years. There were no signs of trauma or foul play, just a woman whose system couldn't take it anymore. She was 4'11", barely 90 pounds, and her organs were giving out. Overdose from potent heroin batch. Janis Joplin was found face down on the floor of her Los Angeles hotel room, a cigarette still in her hand. The death certificate confirmed the cause, heroin overdose, with alcohol playing a supporting role. She was just 27. Another addition to the now famous 27 Club. There was no note, no staged farewell. Her friends said she seemed upbeat the night before, but they also said the heroin in circulation that week was unusually potent. Several others in her circle overdosed around the same time. Her room showed no signs of struggle. An open pack of cigarettes, change on the nightstand, and a cap from a syringe. That's it. No one heard a thing. By the time she was found, it was too late. Toxicology confirmed the drugs in her system were strong enough to stop her heart in minutes. Her liver and heart showed signs of long-term stress, likely from constant use and alcohol. There were rumors, theories, and fan speculation, but the paperwork was simple and final. Joplin didn't plan it. She didn't see it coming. The dose was just too much, and no one was there to catch it in time. Fatal brain swelling from painkiller. Bruce Lee collapsed suddenly while at a colleague's apartment in Hong Kong. The official cause of death, listed on his certificate, was cerebral edema, severe brain swelling. What triggered it was a common prescription drug, Equagesic, a mix of aspirin and a tranquilizer. Just 2 months earlier, Lee had collapsed in a recording studio. Doctors said it was likely heat stroke or a bad reaction to pain meds. He recovered fast, but on the day he died, he complained of a headache and took a single Equagesic tablet. He never woke up. The coroner found no alcohol or recreational drugs in his system, but the reaction to the medication was so extreme, it caused the brain to swell rapidly. His earlier episode should have been a warning. Instead, it was dismissed. Heart was nearly double-sized. Elvis Presley's death certificate said he died of a heart attack. What the final medical examiner's notes revealed was more severe. His heart weighed over 500 grams. That's nearly twice the normal size. Found face down in the bathroom at Graceland, Elvis had been battling multiple health issues. The certificate pointed to cardiac arrhythmia, but the details added up to something bigger. His body showed signs of chronic constipation, liver damage, and nerve issues. The heart enlargement stood out. It was proof his system had been under pressure for years. Toxicology found 14 different substances in his blood, all prescriptions, some meant for sleep, others for digestion or pain. He wasn't over the limit on any single drug, but together, they overwhelmed him. The heart simply couldn't keep up. The report also noted excessive fluid in his lungs and swelling in his colon, symptoms missed during routine checkups. He hadn't looked well in years, but few knew how far gone he was. Brain shrinking from alcohol use. Truman Capote's death certificate listed liver disease as the primary cause, but the final report also noted brain atrophy. His brain had started shrinking. That detail never made the headlines, but it explained everything. Capote had long battled addiction. Alcohol and pills were his daily routine in his final years. His speech had become slurred, his memory unreliable. By the time of his death, friends barely recognized him. He died in a guest bedroom at a friend's house in Los Angeles. The death certificate cited liver failure complicated by phlebitis and multiple drug intoxication. But the coroner included a quiet note, signs of central nervous system decline consistent with long-term substance use. In plain terms, his brain was deteriorating. There was no single overdose, no drama, just a body shutting down piece by piece. The shrinking brain explained his erratic behavior, confusion, and emotional swings. It was the kind of detail most people miss, but it said everything about what those last years were really like. Blunt trauma before drowning. Carol Wayne was best known for her bubbly roles on late-night television. She vanished during a trip to Mexico. Days later, her body was found face down in shallow water. The death certificate said probable drowning, but the autopsy listed something else: blunt trauma to the head and abdomen. She had been vacationing with a man she'd argued with earlier that week. According to him, she went for a walk alone and never came back. But the coroner noted bruises inconsistent with a fall or accidental slip. No alcohol or drugs were found in her system. The Mexican authorities closed the case quickly. No foul play was listed, no follow-up was done. The report left open the possibility of an accident, but the injuries raised doubts. Her passport, jewelry, and luggage were all still in the hotel. The certificate didn't tell the full story, but it showed more than what the press reported at the time. Survived, but not really. Dominique Dunn was in a coma for 5 days. That part's rarely mentioned. The coroner's report confirmed she had brain activity at first. Machines kept her breathing while her family waited. Her certificate lists the final cause, traumatic asphyxia, but the timeline made it more tragic. She had been attacked in her driveway by her ex-boyfriend. Neighbors heard her scream. By the time paramedics arrived, she had lost consciousness. But she didn't die on the spot. She lingered, and the hospital documented it: all seizures, swelling, brain hemorrhage. Her injuries were brutal. The autopsy noted fractures around the neck and deep bruising, but the certificate emphasized something else: respiratory arrest due to external pressure. Clinical, but clear. Her family eventually removed life support. That's when the certificate was finalized. The delay made headlines, but the official record captured the quiet suffering in between. Unusual toxicology. No clear answers. David Carradine was found in a Bangkok hotel closet, partially suspended by cords. The death certificate listed asphyxiation. The circumstances were unusual, and the official investigation left more questions than clarity. There were no signs of forced entry, no alcohol or illegal drugs in his system. Thai authorities ruled it an accident. The exact mechanism wasn't publicly detailed, and no charges were filed. Some reports suggested the manner of death was self-inflicted, but the family disputed those claims. The LAPD opened a review at the family's request, though they had no authority abroad. Carradine's family ordered a private autopsy in the U.S., but the results were never released in full. There were rumors about chemical traces and missed forensic details, but no confirmed evidence was made public. Carradine had a long acting career and was in Bangkok filming a new movie. He'd last been seen the night before at dinner with producers. Lethal mix of prescribed sedatives. Heath Ledger was found face down in bed at his New York apartment. The death certificate listed acute intoxication from a mix of prescription medications. None were illegal, but together, they slowed his body down until it couldn't recover. Toxicology showed 6 medications in his system: 2 painkillers, 2 anti-anxiety drugs, a sleeping aid, and an antihistamine. Each drug was within legal limits, but the combination was lethal. The sedatives depressed his breathing, leading to oxygen loss and eventual heart failure. There were no signs of trauma, and no note was left behind. His house was quiet, his bed undisturbed. He had been battling insomnia and anxiety for months. Doctors had prescribed the drugs separately, but no one tracked how they would interact in his body. The coroner ruled the death accidental. He didn't take too much of one thing, he took just enough of everything to make recovery impossible. His breathing slowed while he slept, and no one noticed until it was too late. Organs too decayed to test. Brittany Murphy's death was ruled as pneumonia with secondary anemia and multiple drug intoxication, but the report included a line that raised eyebrows. Several of her organs were too decayed to test properly. That wasn't due to delay. It happened fast, within hours of death. She collapsed in her bathroom and was pronounced dead at the hospital. Her husband claimed she had flu-like symptoms for days. The coroner found dozens of medications in her system, mostly over-the-counter drugs. No illegal substances, no high-dose narcotics. What shocked investigators wasn't the toxicology, it was the rapid breakdown of tissue. Her organs had started to rot unusually fast. That led to speculation about mold in her home or environmental toxins. Nothing conclusive was ever found. Her father later called for further testing. The LA County coroner said no foul play was involved. Still, the organ decay made it difficult to get a clear answer. When her husband died just 5 months later under similar conditions, The questions grew. The report stayed the same, natural causes, but the body had deteriorated so quickly that some answers died with her. Severe nasal collapse noted. Michael Jackson's death certificate cited acute propofol intoxication, but deeper in the autopsy were findings related to years of surgeries, most notably severe nasal collapse. The structure of his nose had weakened to the point that breathing through it was limited. One nostril was nearly closed off. His personal doctor had administered the surgical anesthetic to help him sleep. Combined with other sedatives, it stopped his breathing. But the report also included physical signs of long-term strain, scarring from multiple operations, adhesive residue from prosthetic support, and thinning cartilage. These weren't the cause of death, but they helped explain his overall condition. His lungs were inflamed, his skin showed signs of vitiligo, and his weight had dropped below 140 pounds. The nasal collapse was one of many stress points his body had endured quietly for years. Jackson's team tried to control the narrative, but the certificate listed not only the overdose, but also contributing conditions: chronic insomnia, multiple medical dependencies, and respiratory restriction from past surgeries. Prescription bottles with labels removed. Whitney Houston was found unresponsive in a Beverly Hilton bathtub. Her death certificate listed drowning, with heart disease and drug use as contributing factors. But the investigators' notes included a strange detail. Several pill bottles in her room had missing or scratched-off labels. The coroner found a mix of prescription medications, anxiety pills, muscle relaxers, and antihistamines. None were in illegal quantities. But the altered bottle suggested someone didn't want the exact sources identified. That part was never explained. Toxicology showed she had used cocaine recently, but the levels weren't considered fatal. What likely happened was a sudden cardiac event, followed by unconsciousness and slipping beneath the water. The bathwater was shallow, but she never came up. Her body also had minor abrasions on her forehead, nose, and upper lip. The report said they may have come from contact with the tub during the fall. The combination of prescription drugs and a weakened heart proved too much, but the missing labels added a layer of mystery: advanced decay hours after death. Philip Seymour Hoffman was found in his New York apartment with a syringe still in his arm. The death certificate cited acute mixed drug intoxication. But the medical notes described something surprising. His body showed signs of advanced decomposition far earlier than expected. The coroner noted full postmortem lividity, body stiffness, and skin changes that usually take longer to appear. It suggested he had been gone for many hours before discovery, maybe even the entire night. Inside his apartment, police found nearly 70 bags of heroin, many unopened. Several prescription drugs were also on the scene. The combination had overwhelmed his nervous system quickly, but the state of his body hinted that no one had checked on him for some time. Friends thought he'd been clean. He had just finished rehab. The advanced decay made the timeline difficult to piece together. No one heard anything. No neighbors reported noise. The scene was silent and stayed that way for hours. Chest burns from emergency shocks. Carrie Fisher's death certificate listed sleep apnea and other undetermined factors. But the full report revealed burn marks across her chest, residue from emergency defibrillator paddles used mid-flight. Fisher had gone into cardiac arrest on a plane from London to Los Angeles. Passengers reported she stopped breathing just before landing. Paramedics rushed on board and began CPR immediately. The burns came from repeated shocks to restart her heart. They didn't work. Toxicology later found multiple substances in her system. The mix wasn't high enough to name a single cause. The coroner wrote that while drug use likely contributed, the exact trigger couldn't be confirmed. What stood out were the efforts to save her. The burns were deep enough to be noted in the report, showing how hard responders tried. She was on a ventilator for days before she passed. The official file didn't blame the substances alone. It pointed to long-standing health problems, sleep apnea, and a weakened heart. Stroke-struck hours after collapse. Debbie Reynolds passed away just one day after her daughter, Carrie Fisher. Her death certificate listed intracerebral hemorrhage, a massive stroke caused by bleeding in the brain. It was sudden, and it hit hard. She collapsed at her son Todd's home while discussing funeral arrangements for Carrie. Paramedics arrived quickly, but her condition was already deteriorating. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors couldn't reverse the damage. Though no autopsy was publicly released, it was confirmed that she had a history of high blood pressure, a major risk factor for strokes in older adults. She had no recent major illnesses, and her death caught many by surprise. Some sources mention possible complications during the collapse, including breathing difficulties. But the cause was clear: a catastrophic brain event brought on by long-term vascular strain and possibly worsened by the emotional stress of losing her daughter. The timing was heartbreaking. 2 icons, gone within 36 hours. Her death certificate made no mention of grief, but everyone close to her believed it played a role. Natalie Wood, the drowning. November 29, 1981. The body of Natalie Wood was pulled from the waters off Catalina Island. She was found wearing a red down jacket, a flannel nightgown, and socks, an unusual outfit for someone who had supposedly gone for a late-night boat ride. The official cause of death: accidental drowning. But nothing about the scene made sense. The autopsy revealed fresh bruises on her arms, wrists, and legs, signs she had either fallen, been restrained, or struggled before entering the water. The report noted a small scrape on her left cheek and superficial injuries on her body, though none were classified as defensive wounds. Alcohol and painkillers were in her system, but not at overdose levels. The coroner initially ruled that she had likely slipped, fallen overboard, and drowned. Case closed. Except there were glaring inconsistencies. For one, Robert Wagner, her husband, waited hours before alerting authorities. Official reports say she had been missing since around midnight, yet the Coast Guard wasn't called until 1:30 a.m. The only other people on board Splendor that night: Christopher Walken and the boat's captain, Dennis Davern. Walken never publicly spoke about what happened. Davern, on the other hand, later admitted they had all been drinking heavily and that an argument had erupted before Wood somehow ended up in the water. Witnesses on nearby boats reported hearing a woman screaming for help that night, but no distress calls were made from Splendor. Wagner later admitted in his memoir that he and Wood had been fighting, but denied any involvement in her death. Yet, when Davern changed his story years later, claiming Wagner was responsible, the case was reopened in 2011. The cause of death was amended to drowning and other undetermined factors, citing the unexplained bruises and new witness statements. Wagner was eventually named a person of interest, but with no concrete evidence, no charges were filed. The mystery remains unresolved. How did Natalie Wood end up in the water? And why did it take so long to ask the right questions? Judy Garland, the final autopsy. Judy Garland's death certificate listed accidental barbiturate overdose. But the real horror wasn't just how she died, it was what led to it. When she was found in her London home on June 22, 1969, the scene was eerily calm. No distress, no final note, just the quiet end of a woman who had spent her life running on empty. The autopsy told the full story. Garland weighed only 90 pounds. Her body showed signs of severe malnutrition. Her liver was deteriorating, and her stomach was completely empty, meaning she hadn't eaten for some time before her death. The official cause: an accidental overdose of Seconal, a barbiturate she had relied on for years. Unlike Marilyn Monroe's case, there was no question of foul play, no suspicious bruises, no missing toxicology reports, just a tragic but predictable outcome. She had been prescribed barbiturates for decades, first by MGM studio doctors to keep her performing, then by personal physicians who likely meant well but contributed to her growing dependence. This wasn't a sudden overdose. It was a slow, decades-long breakdown. The same Hollywood machine that made her a star had systematically worn her down. Studio execs had put her on diet pills at 16, forced her through grueling filming schedules with uppers to keep her awake and downers to put her to sleep. And by the time she was an adult, her body no longer functioned without them. In the last years of her life, she was physically and financially exhausted. She had lost her home, struggled through multiple marriages, and relied on live performances just to survive. A 1968 interview showed her hands trembling as she tried to explain why she kept going. "I have to work. It's the only thing I know." The coroner ruled her death accidental, but that word barely scratches the surface. Judy Garland was worked to death before she ever stopped breathing. Bob Crane, the bludgeoning. The charismatic star of Hogan's Heroes, Bob Crane, was found brutally murdered in his Scottsdale, Arizona apartment on June 29, 1978. His death certificate listed the cause in stark clinical terms: homicide by blunt instrument. That barely scratched the surface of what police walked into. The crime scene was grisly. Crane was discovered in his bed, his skull shattered by multiple blows to the head. Blood spatter coated the walls and ceiling, and investigators determined the murder weapon was likely a heavy-duty camera tripod. His injuries were devastating: severe head trauma, deep lacerations, and massive hemorrhaging. The force of the blows suggested rage, not just an attempt to kill but to destroy. Then there was the electrical cord. It was wrapped around his neck, but there was no clear forensic evidence proving whether it was used to strangle him or simply placed there after death. The Scottsdale police were immediately suspicious. This wasn't a random attack, it was personal. Crane's complicated personal life only deepened the mystery. He had a well-documented habit of filming explicit tapes with various women, often alongside his closest friend, John Carpenter, not the director. Carpenter, a video equipment salesman, frequently supplied Crane with cameras and editing tools, making him more than just a bystander in Crane's secret lifestyle. And conveniently, he was one of the last people to see Crane alive. Police quickly zeroed in on Carpenter as the prime suspect. His rental car was searched, and inside they found traces of blood that matched Crane's blood type. But this was 1978. DNA testing wasn't where it is today. Blood type evidence wasn't enough for a conviction. Without a direct forensic link, the case stalled. Years later, in 1992, Carpenter was charged with Crane's murder when new technology allowed for DNA retesting. But the results were inconclusive, and he was acquitted. To this day, Bob Crane's murder remains officially unsolved. Sharon Tate, the gruesome reality. August 9, 1969. Sharon Tate's body was discovered inside the home she shared with her husband, director Roman Polanski, in Benedict Canyon. The address, 10,050 Cielo Drive, would forever be tied to one of the most horrific crimes in Hollywood history. But beyond the newspaper headlines and the chilling Manson family mythology, her autopsy revealed a reality even more brutal than the world initially knew. The official cause of death: multiple stab wounds. The coroner's report, however, exposed a level of savagery that defied logic. Tate, 8 months pregnant, was stabbed 16 times, with 5 wounds considered fatal. Despite her pregnancy, she showed clear signs of trying to defend herself. Cuts and slashes on her arms and hands indicated she had fought back. Blood spatter evidence suggested she was still alive during most of the attack, enduring unimaginable pain as her killers carried out Charles Manson's twisted orders. The crime scene itself horrified even the most seasoned investigators. The walls were smeared with blood, with the word "pig" scrawled in Tate's own blood on the front door. A thick white rope was looped around her neck and tied to a ceiling beam, connecting her to the body of Jay Sebring, a celebrity hairstylist and her close friend, who had been killed before her. Tate's final moments were pure terror, pleading for the life of her unborn child before Watson and Krenwinkel struck the final blows. The autopsy put to rest several grisly rumors. There was no post-mortem mutilation. Her unborn child, a boy who would have been named Paul Richard Polanski, remained inside her. The infamous whispers that the baby had been cut from her body were entirely false. When the report was released, it further solidified the sheer brutality of the Manson family's crime spree. Her autopsy was the final word on a crime so horrific that it remains burned into public memory more than 50 years later. Behind the glamour of old Hollywood was a hotbed of scandal. Think love triangles, blackmail, and rumors so wild they'd make Twitter explode today. The Clark Gable and Loretta Young love child scandal. One of the most whispered about was the rumor that Clark Gable fathered a secret child with Loretta Young. The year was 1935, and the two were co-stars in The Call of the Wild. Off camera, it was said sparks flew. Gable, married to socialite Rhea Langham, had a reputation for on-set flings. Loretta Young, on the other hand, was known for her strict Catholic faith and carefully curated image of innocence. After filming Wrapped, Young disappeared from the spotlight. Months later, she returned, announcing she had adopted a baby girl named Judy. Her story was that Judy was an orphan who needed a home, but Judy's striking resemblance to Gable, right down to his distinctive ears, made the cover story hard to believe. Whispers of an affair and a secret pregnancy circulated immediately. Both stars stayed quiet. Gable, often referred to as the King of Hollywood, never publicly addressed the rumors. Young stuck to her adoption claim, protecting her career and reputation. Insiders, however, hinted that Gable made secret visits to Judy, further fueling the speculation. MGM reportedly stepped in to bury the story, fearful of how it might damage its stars. For nearly 6 decades, the truth remained hidden. It wasn't until 1994 that Young, in a rare interview, confirmed what many had long suspected. Judy was her biological daughter, the result of what she described as a non-consensual encounter with Gable during the filming of The Call of the Wild. This shocking revelation cast the scandal in a far darker light, reframing what had been romanticized as an affair into a story of exploitation. The confession added complexity to both Gable and Young's public personas. For Judy, it ended a lifetime of rumors, but also exposed the darker side of old Hollywood. Joan Crawford's alleged blue movies. Her career was the definition of Hollywood success, but behind her polished image, whispers of a scandal threatened to tarnish her legacy. By the 1930s, Crawford was one of MGM's brightest stars. However, rumors suggested her rise to fame had a darker backstory. The claims that before her Hollywood breakthrough, she'd appeared in adult films to make ends meet. These films, often called stag films, were part of an underground scene in the 1920s. Crawford, known then as Lucille LeSueur, was said to have participated in these productions during her early days as a struggling dancer. Fans found her swift transformation into a Hollywood star suspicious, speculating that someone powerful had helped her bury her past. Eddie Mannix, MGM's infamous fixer, was often linked to these rumors. Mannix was the studio's go-to guy for cleaning up messes and protecting its stars. Allegedly, he stepped in to handle the Crawford situation, tracking down and destroying any negatives of the supposed films. MGM was known for its obsession with controlling the public image of its stars, so the idea isn't far-fetched. Still, no concrete proof of Mannix's involvement, or the films themselves, has ever surfaced. Crawford, for her part, denied the allegations her entire life. She called the rumors malicious lies meant to drag her down. Decades later, her adopted daughter Christina reignited public interest in Crawford's private life with her controversial book, Mommy Dearest. While the memoir didn't address the adult film rumors directly, its shocking portrayal of Crawford added fuel to the fire about her hidden past. Despite the intrigue, no evidence has ever confirmed the existence of these alleged films. Were they a smear tactic against a powerful woman in Hollywood, or was there some truth to the whispers? We may never know, but the rumors have ensured that Crawford's name remains as infamous as it is iconic, proving that Hollywood's obsession with scandal knows no bounds. Errol Flynn's espionage allegations. He was the ultimate Hollywood swashbuckler, famous for his charisma and swordplay. But during World War II, a darker story started to circulate. Flynn, the man behind Robin Hood's smile, was rumored to be a Nazi spy. As wild as it sounded, the FBI took these whispers seriously and kept an active file on him. The allegations weren't baseless. Flynn had a close friendship with Hermann Urban, an Austrian doctor with confirmed Nazi ties. The two shared a love of travel, but Urban's documented connections to German intelligence raised alarms. Flynn's frequent trips to Europe during the war didn't help his case. Add to that his Austrian roots and his perceived indifference to the Allied cause, and the rumors began to stick. The conspiracy gained momentum in 1980, thanks to Charles Hyam's book Errol Flynn, The Untold Story. Hyam painted Flynn as a double agent, claiming the actor passed information to the Nazis while maintaining his Hollywood image. The book alleged Flynn's charm and international lifestyle made him the perfect spy. It also accused Flynn of using his Hollywood clout to help Urban and other Nazi sympathizers. But Hyam's claims were heavily criticized. Historians and Flynn supporters argued the evidence was flimsy and speculative. The FBI's files, while extensive, lacked any smoking gun. Flynn's defenders labeled Hyam's book a hit piece, accusing the author of exaggerating for shock value. Many believe the rumors were fueled by Flynn's reckless lifestyle rather than actual treachery. Despite the pushback, the damage was done. The mere suggestion of espionage left a stain on Flynn's legacy. Even today, the idea of Hollywood's most dashing hero harboring Nazi sympathies remains a tantalizing what if. So what's the truth? Was Flynn just an adventure junkie with bad judgment in friends, or did his charm mask something far more sinister? The lack of definitive evidence keeps the mystery alive, leaving fans and critics to debate whether Flynn's greatest act was on-screen or off. Marilyn Monroe's mysterious diaries. Her death in 1962 left behind more questions than answers. One of the most persistent rumors revolves around her alleged secret diaries. These journals supposedly contained shocking details about her relationships with John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert. For decades, these rumored diaries have fueled conspiracy theories and added to the intrigue surrounding Monroe's life and death. Monroe was known for keeping journals. She used them to write poetry, reflect on her life, and document personal experiences. Biographer Anthony Summers, in his book Goddess: The Secret Lives of Marilyn Monroe, suggested she recorded sensitive details from conversations with the Kennedys. Allegedly, some entries included political secrets and information that could have made her a liability. The circumstances of Monroe's death have only added to the speculation. Found lifeless in her Brentwood home, she was officially ruled a victim of a barbiturate overdose. However, the involvement of the FBI and LAPD in the investigation raised eyebrows. Rumors claim Monroe's house was searched extensively, and anything incriminating, like the alleged diaries, was quietly removed. Some close to Monroe, including her friends, insisted they had seen her write about her encounters with powerful men, adding fuel to the fire. Despite decades of speculation, no one has ever found these diaries. Some believe they were destroyed to protect the reputations of high-profile figures. Others argue the diaries never existed, suggesting they were invented by the media to sensationalize her tragic story. The lack of evidence hasn't stopped books, documentaries, and theorists from speculating about what they might have contained. Charles Chaplin's paternity battle. Charles Chaplin may have revolutionized film, but his personal life was often front-page news. By the 1940s, Chaplin was already a magnet for controversy, and the 1943 paternity suit filed by Joan Barry added fuel to the fire. Barry, a 22-year-old aspiring actress, claimed Chaplin was the father of her daughter, Carol Ann. The case quickly became a media frenzy, overshadowing Chaplin's cinematic brilliance. Barry's relationship with Chaplin had ended before her pregnancy, and he firmly denied fathering her child. He pointed to Barry's erratic behavior, stalking him, breaking into his home, as evidence of her instability. Still, her claims gained momentum, and the case went to court. In a bid to prove his innocence, Chaplin agreed to a blood test. At the time, this was cutting-edge science. The results were clear. Chaplin was not the biological father, but there was a catch. Under California law, blood tests were inadmissible in paternity cases. The jury ruled against Chaplin, ordering him to pay child support. The verdict caused public outrage, with many questioning the fairness of the decision. The scandal didn't stop in the courtroom. It gave Chaplin's enemies, including FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, exactly what they needed to intensify their attacks. Hoover, who was already suspicious of Chaplin's political leanings, used the trial to paint him as both immoral and un-American. The FBI's campaign against Chaplin wasn't subtle. It added pressure to an already tense situation, leading to his forced departure from the U.S. in 1952. He relocated to Switzerland, where he spent the rest of his life. Despite the controversy, Chaplin continued making groundbreaking films, though the paternity case cast a long shadow over his later years. Judy Garland's alleged drug coercion. Judy's talent lit up the screen, but her life behind the scenes told a darker story. Her career, especially during her teenage years, has been heavily scrutinized for the alleged exploitation she endured under MGM's iron grip. Many believe the studio orchestrated her dependency on drugs to keep her working at an unrelenting pace. Garland was just 13 when she signed with MGM. While her voice was unmatched, executives cruelly criticized her appearance, labeling her the Little Hunchback. To fit Hollywood's rigid standards, she was subjected to harsh dietary controls. Reports suggest her meals consisted of black coffee, chicken soup, and diet pills, all closely monitored by studio staff. The most shocking claims involve amphetamines, pep pills, allegedly given to Garland to keep her energized for marathon filming schedules. During The Wizard of Oz, she was said to work up to 18-hour days, running on little more than these stimulants. To help her sleep, barbiturates were reportedly prescribed, creating a dangerous cycle of dependency. By adulthood, Garland's struggles with addiction were undeniable. Her personal life and career began to show the strain. She often spoke candidly about her experience with the studio system, saying, "They had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted, then knock us out with sleeping pills when the work was done." Her battles didn't stop there. She faced public breakdowns, hospitalizations, and strained relationships. Despite these challenges, her raw talent and resilience kept her fighting for her place in Hollywood. Garland's tragic death in 1969, at just 47 years old, was attributed to an overdose. It was a heartbreaking end for a star who had given so much to the industry but received so little care in return. Her story remains a grim reminder of how old Hollywood often treated its stars as commodities rather than people, prioritizing profit over well-being. Judy Garland will always be remembered for her brilliance, but her struggles highlight the darker side of fame in the industry's golden era. The murder mystery of Thelma Todd. Her death in December 1935 stunned Hollywood. Known as the Ice Cream Blonde, she was beloved for her comedic timing and glamorous looks. At 29, Todd was a star on the rise, transitioning from silent films to talkies with ease. She also ran Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe, a hotspot for celebrities along the Pacific Coast Highway. But her success was overshadowed by her mysterious death, which has remained unsolved. Todd's body was found slumped in her car inside the garage of her lover and business partner, Roland West. The garage, located above her cafe, became the center of intense speculation. The coroner ruled her death accidental, caused by carbon monoxide poisoning from her car's running engine. Still, the details surrounding her death didn't add up, sparking rumors that refused to die. Weeks before her death, Todd allegedly received threats from mobsters demanding money from her cafe. Organized crime figures saw her business as prime real estate for their operations. Her refusal to comply may have put her in danger. Adding fuel to the fire, Todd was seen arguing at a party the night before with her ex-husband, Pat DeSico, who had known mob connections. Then there was Roland West. West's controlling behavior and rocky relationship with Todd made him another prime suspect in the public's eyes. Some believed West locked her in the garage after an argument, not realizing the car was still running. West's shifting accounts of that night only deepened the suspicion. The coroner's report didn't help matters. It mentioned minor bruises on Todd's face and body, leading to speculation about a possible struggle. Yet there were no clear signs of foul play, leaving investigators without solid evidence. Despite the public outcry, the case was closed as an accidental death. Thelma Todd's story is still a favorite among true crime buffs. Was it a tragic accident? A mob hit? A lover's quarrel gone horribly wrong? The truth remains elusive, ensuring her death remains one of Hollywood's most talked-about mysteries. Rock Hudson's hidden truth. He had it all: looks, charm, and a career most actors could only dream of. He became Hollywood's go-to leading man in the 1950s, starring in romantic hits that solidified his image as the ultimate symbol of masculinity. Fans loved him, studios relied on him, and his name alone could sell out theaters. But behind the perfectly polished exterior was a secret that Hollywood worked overtime to keep hidden. Rumors about Hudson's sexuality began circulating early in his career. Back then, even a hint of being gay could end a star's career. Hudson's agent, Henry Wilson, was infamous for covering up scandals and managing his clients' images with ruthless efficiency. When whispers about Hudson started growing louder, Wilson orchestrated a hasty solution: a marriage. In 1955, Hudson married Phyllis Gates, Wilson's secretary. The timing wasn't subtle. It came right after a tabloid threatened to publish a story about Hudson's personal life. Gates later claimed she didn't know Hudson was gay when they married, but skeptics have doubted her version of events. The marriage lasted 3 years, but by then it had served its purpose: silencing the rumors. Behind closed doors, Hudson lived a carefully compartmentalized life. Close friends and co-stars knew the truth, but loyalty and fear of the industry's backlash kept them quiet. Studio executives wielded immense power and had no problem squashing tabloid stories that could tarnish their golden boy. Everything changed in 1985 when Hudson announced he had immune deficiency syndrome. He was the first major celebrity to publicly disclose the diagnosis, a move that shocked fans and confirmed the rumors. The revelation came at a time when advanced HIV disease was deeply stigmatized, and Hudson's bravery helped bring global attention to the crisis. His death later that year was mourned worldwide and exposed the hypocrisy of an industry that demanded perfection at any cost. Lana Turner and the Johnny Stompanato murder. Lana Turner's relationship with Johnny Stompanato had everything tabloids could dream of: a Hollywood icon, a mobster boyfriend, and an explosive ending. Stompanato, a known associate of crime boss Mickey Cohen, wasn't just bad news. He was dangerous. Despite his charm, his violent streak quickly turned their romance into a toxic mess of arguments and reconciliations. By 1958, the relationship had reached its breaking point. On April 4th, an argument in Turner's Beverly Hills home escalated to violence. Turner later testified that Stompanato threatened her, causing her 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, to step in. Grabbing a kitchen knife, Cheryl stabbed him in the abdomen. He died almost instantly. The fallout was chaotic. The media swarmed Turner's home, turning the incident into a nationwide scandal. Headlines screamed speculation about what really happened that night. At the coroner's inquest, Cheryl claimed she acted in self-defense to protect her mother. Turner backed her up, tearfully recounting the abuse she'd endured. The jury ruled it justifiable homicide, but whispers of a different story refused to die. Some questioned whether Cheryl, a teenager with no history of violence, could deliver such a precise fatal wound. Others believed Turner herself had wielded the knife and that Cheryl took the blame to save her mother's career. Stompanato's mob connections added another layer of intrigue. There were rumors that his death wasn't an accident at all. Some suggested Mickey Cohen had orchestrated the killing either to eliminate liability or settle a personal grudge. Cohen, of course, denied any involvement. Despite the jury's decision, the scandal haunted Turner. While she continued acting, her glamorous image was forever tied to the tragedy. Cheryl, too, struggled with the weight of public scrutiny. The case remains one of old Hollywood's most infamous stories, blending celebrity drama with true crime. Whether it was a desperate act of protection or a cover-up, the Stompanato murder still fuels endless speculation. Decades later, it's clear this was no ordinary Hollywood breakup. It was a headline-grabbing scandal that left scars on everyone involved. The Black Dahlia and Hollywood. The murder of Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia, remains one of Hollywood's darkest mysteries. In January 1947, her mutilated body was found in a vacant Los Angeles lot. The crime was horrifying and left posed in a gruesome manner. The case immediately grabbed headlines, with every sordid detail plastered across newspapers. Short, just 22 years old, had come to LA chasing dreams of becoming an actress. Like many others, she struggled to find work, often relying on friends or admirers for support. When her murder hit the news, her personal life became fodder for speculation. Reporters and the public alike were eager to link her to Hollywood's elite. Rumors swirled that she had attended exclusive parties thrown by powerful industry figures. Some even suggested she had rejected the wrong man's advances, which led to her untimely death. One theory that refuses to die is the involvement of Dr. George Hodel, a prominent and wealthy physician. Hodel was known for hosting extravagant gatherings attended by artists, intellectuals, and Hollywood insiders. Decades later, his own son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD detective, accused him of being the killer. Steve presented evidence, including old photos of a woman resembling Short and his father's medical expertise, which matched the surgical precision of the crime. The accusations against George Hodel didn't come out of nowhere. During the 1940s, he was investigated for other crimes, including the suspicious death of his secretary. Although Hodel was never charged in the Black Dahlia case, his connection to it has fueled endless speculation. Elizabeth Short's murder remains unsolved, but her name is forever tied to the shadowy side of Hollywood. Whether she was targeted for her ambitions, a chance encounter, or something more sinister, the crime highlighted the dangers lurking in the industry.
From extramarital affairs to pure undiluted lust on set, some of the stars of Hollywood's golden age just couldn't help their attraction. But following your passions has its own consequences, and for these stars, a love child they were not expecting was the result of their trysts. The response to having love children differed between these talented stars. As a matter of fact, some kept it so much a secret that you'd be shocked when you find out the truth. Michael Lindsay Hogg. It is possible to hide an affair from the world, but the one thing that cannot be hidden is the striking resemblance between a child and his parents. Perhaps this was the reason why, no matter how much his mother denied it, Michael Lindsay Hogg believed that his father was not the man he grew up with. He had a gut feeling that his father was an actor he had seen a couple of times. If you have ever come across the mind-blowing artistic works of Michael Lindsay Hogg, you'll know that he is an embodiment of rare talent. Whether he is behind the scenes of films, theater, or music videos, he is the kind of director who stands out. But what if I told you that he probably got his creative abilities from his mother, Geraldine Fitzgerald, who was a talented old Hollywood actress? But that's not all. The man he suspected to be his father was none other than the legendary actor and director, Orson Welles. So, this leaves us with the question, why did Michael grow up believing that he was fathered by the famous actor? Well, let's go back to how it all started. In the 1930s, Michael's mother, Geraldine Fitzgerald, was a well-known actress. She was one of the actresses who captivated audiences at the time through her roles in films like Dark Victory and Poltergeist. Because she was famous, everyone knew she was married to Sir Edward Lindsay Hogg. However, it was later rumored that she got into a brief affair with Orson Welles, who was married to Virginia Nicholson at the time. It was said that they were so attracted to each other that they moved their families to the same neighborhood so that they would be able to see each other often. This steamy affair allegedly led to the birth of Michael Lindsay Hogg. Because the families lived close to each other, Michael grew up alongside his alleged half-sister, Christopher Wells Feeder. It will amaze you to know that Christopher once said that she always felt a sibling connection with Michael, but she could never explain why. When Michael began to suspect that Orson Welles was his biological father, he approached his mother, but she denied over and over again. Despite the fact that she denied the rumors, Michael saw through her and believed that she wasn't telling the truth. Although she took this secret to her grave, Michael was hell-bent on finding answers no matter how difficult it was. When he got older, he made up his mind to find the truth once and for all. He would later take a DNA test, and while some reports claimed that the test confirmed Olson was his father, other reports claimed that it was inconclusive. But perhaps the words of his mother's trusted friend, Gloria Vanderbilt, gave him the closure he needed.
Gloria confirmed to Michael that Olsen was indeed his biological father. One can only imagine the confusion and uncertainty young Michael nursed while growing up. It's good to know that he finally has some closure about the issue. Although his past was undoubtedly tumultuous and his parentage was undoubtedly complicated, Michael has grown to be a talented man. Michael Lindsay Hogg, he is not like any other director you have seen before. You name it, he's done it. Film, TV, music videos, you name it. Remember the Beatles' rooftop concert in Let It Be? Yep, he captured that magic. And those iconic Beatles promo videos for Hey Jude and Revolution, his genius at work. But it's not just the Beatles. He's rocked with the Rolling Stones and jammed with Elton John, directing some seriously cool music videos. On the small screen, he's dipped his toes into classics like Brideshead Revisited and brought a touch of class to The Equalizer. And let's not forget his work in film, from the intriguingly titled Nasty Habits to the suspenseful The Sound of Murder. He's like the ultimate directorial all-rounder, spinning his magic across the entertainment universe for decades. This love child has grown to be a man who has fought to make his dreams come true. Judy Lewis. In an industry where everyone seems to know everyone's secret, the paternity of young Judy Lewis became a source of whispers and gossip. There was no denying that she looked like the then-famous actor Clark Gable, but she grew up believing that she was an adopted child. It all started when Gable and Loretta's parts crossed amidst the dazzling lights and opulent sets. Initially, they were just colleagues, but as time went on, they began to fall for each other. Clark Gable, the dashing king of Hollywood, and Loretta Young, the enchanting leading lady, could no longer hide how they felt about each other. Their on-screen chemistry was palpable, but it was behind closed doors where their passion truly ignited, away from the watchful eyes of studio executives and gossip columnists. Amidst the breathtaking landscapes of film sets, their affair flourished, defying the moral codes and societal norms of the time. Loretta, with her starry eyes and porcelain beauty, found herself swept away by Gable's charm. Considering her reputation, no one would have thought that Loretta Young would find herself entangled with Clark Gable. Loretta Young was widely regarded as a woman of strong moral character throughout her career in Hollywood. She was known for her grace, poise, and dedication to her craft. Young was often praised for her professionalism and integrity, both on and off the screen. She maintained a wholesome image and was perceived as a role model for many, particularly during the more conservative era of Hollywood. One can say she was a morally upright individual. Clark Gable, on the other hand, didn't have a spotless reputation. His reputation is a bit more complex. While he was undoubtedly one of the most charismatic and talented actors of his time, Gable was also known for his somewhat tumultuous personal life. He had multiple marriages and was rumored to have engaged in extramarital affairs. Despite this, Gable maintained a strong work ethic and was respected for his dedication to his craft. However, his personal life often overshadowed his professional achievements, leading to a more mixed perception of his morality compared to Loretta Young. Although they probably intended to keep their affair a secret forever, something happened that brought their secret love to light. This was the birth of their live child, Judy Lewis. Judy's existence remained hidden from the scrutinizing gaze of an industry built on illusions and perfection. Loretta, determined to protect her child from judgment, went to great lengths to conceal the truth, confiding only in the inner circles of Hollywood's elite. But as time went on, people began to notice. They could hide their affair, but the one thing they couldn't hide was the resemblance between Judy and her father, Clark Gable. But in order to keep their secret hidden, Loretta Young told her child that she was adopted. It was when Judy was 15 years old that she met her father for the first time. He came over to Loretta Young's house, but there was no discussion about whether or not Gable was her father. Judy grew up believing that she was indeed adopted and tried to ignore the rumors about her paternity. Yet, as fate would have it, secrets have a way of surfacing. The revelation of Judy Lewis as the love child of Clark Gable and Loretta Young rocked the very foundation of Hollywood glamour. It was said that Judy found out that the famous actor was indeed her father, and not just her mother's friend on her wedding day. Judy, who was 31 years old at that time, confronted her mother and demanded nothing but the truth on her wedding day. Her mother, filled with emotions and regret, finally revealed the truth to her daughter. Judy, now a young woman, unveiled the long-guarded secret. As expected, the revelation sparked a media frenzy, casting a shadow on the shining reputation of one of Hollywood's most iconic leading men. She would later write an autobiography called Uncommon Knowledge, confirming that she was indeed Clark Gable's child. Roberto Ingmar Rossellini. For several years, Ingrid Bergman made a name for herself as an iconic movie star. She started her career with German and Swedish films, and it wasn't long before Hollywood noticed her. But just when she transitioned into Hollywood and started making waves, she fell in love with a director and began a secret love affair. Ingrid Bergman was a phenomenal actress who was gracing screens for the most part of the late 1930s. Not only was she known for her mind-blowing performances, but filmmakers who worked with her testified that she was a highly talented actress who was willing to go above and beyond to bring her roles to life. Her career skyrocketed in the year 1936 when she played a lead role in the film Intermezzo. She would later appear in Intermezzo, a Love Story, which was her first acting role in the U.S. However, her life took an unexpected turn when she met a director called Roberto Rossellini in the mid-1940s. Following a letter she wrote him, he came to visit her in her home in the United States, and before she knew it, she began to have feelings for him. Interestingly, Ingrid was married to her first husband, Peter Lindstrom, at the time, and they had a daughter together. So, exploring the spark between her and the director would automatically be a taboo. What made it even worse was the fact that they were both married and had feelings for each other at a time when morals and family values were a big deal. It wasn't long before the pair decided to damn the consequences and fully explore the feelings they had for each other. Initially, they were able to hide their affair, but after a while, people began to notice. What made the whole thing even more shocking was that Ingrid had the reputation of a saint. She was one of the few actresses who didn't do cosmetic enhancements and was always praised for her naturalness. She only posed for decent pictures and made sure she didn't soil her reputation. When the news of her affair began circulating in the tabloids, people were beyond shocked. She was condemned by religious bodies, political bodies, and even people once called fans. She was no longer given roles because filmmakers were afraid that her presence in a film would lead to a ban. She was called an adulterous woman, and all kinds of mean things were said about her. But despite all the condemnation, Ingrid and Rossellini's affair only waxed stronger. The director would later divorce his wife for Ingrid, but Ingrid's attempts to leave her husband led to a messy legal battle. Her husband didn't let her go without putting up a fight. Soon enough, she got pregnant and gave birth to their first child in a hospital in Rome on the 2nd of February 1950. They were still unmarried at the time. Back in the day, it was like an abomination for a child to be born out of wedlock, so studios and movie stars did their best to hide love children, but Ingrid and Rossellini decided not to hide any longer. Sadly, this child, who was supposed to mark the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, actually led to an international uproar. It was said that U.S. Senator Edwin C. denounced the actress on the floor of the Senate and called her a disgrace to American womanhood. As if this was not enough, her home country also condemned her actions, highlighting that she disgraced her country. Just like that, this actress, who was once loved and admired, became hated all over the world. Despite all these, Ingrid loved her child, and shortly after, she got married to Roberto Rossellini. Their first son, who is now in his 70s, was said to have worked as an Italian real estate investor and a stockbroker when he was younger. Jack Nicholson. It is nearly impossible to be a fan of Hollywood movies and not come across at least one Jack Nicholson film. This is a cinematic legend whose contributions to film have left an indelible impact on audiences worldwide. There is no denying performances, memorable characters, and unparalleled talent have solidified his place in cinematic history. But what a lot of people may not know is that Jack Nicholson is also a love child. He grew up believing that his mother June was his sister, and that his grandmother Ethel May was his biological mother because of a difficult decision that his mother had to make when he was a baby. But how did this happen? What made Jack Nicholson believe that his mother was his sister? It all began in April 1937 when Jack Nicholson came into this world, but his beginnings were far from ordinary. His father, Donald Fursillo, was already married when he fell in love with a young girl and got her pregnant. Clearly, being involved with a girl who was way younger than him was forbidden, and making it public was only going to get him into trouble. But Donald Fursillo couldn't hide his feelings for this girl, and he wanted to step up and do the right thing, so he decided that he was going to marry her. He set the plan in motion and tied the knot with 17-year-old showgirl June "Dink" Nicholson. But it was only when she said, "I do," that she found out that this Italian-American showman, Donald Furcillo, was keeping a big secret. Immediately, their fresh union was entangled by controversy, taboos, secrets, and lies, because not only was June underage, but Donald already had a wife. Despite this, Don really wanted to take responsibility for his child, and he didn't want June to raise Jack alone. Although Donald's intentions seemed pure, June didn't buy the idea. As soon as she found out that he was already married, she started looking for other ways to ensure that her child was well taken care of. As a young girl who was trying to make ends meet, she knew for a fact that she wouldn't be able to cater to the needs of her child, so she decided to make a difficult decision, which was sending Jack to live with her own parents instead. Because he began living with his grandparents at an early age, Jack grew up believing that his grandparents, Ethel and John Nicholson, were his parents. No matter how tempting it was, his mother never told him the truth about his biological parents. She treated him like a brother, even on days when she was yearning to play the role of a mother. It wasn't until he was 37 years old in 1974 that he discovered the truth. Imagine finding out at that age that the people you thought were your parents were actually your grandparents. It must have been a shock, but the surprises in Jack's life didn't end there. He had quite a colorful romantic life himself. He was married to Sandra Knight in the 1960s, and they had a daughter named Jennifer. But Jack's relationships weren't always conventional. He had affairs, one of which resulted in a daughter named Honey Holman. Honey was born during his 17-year relationship with actress Angelica Houston. Imagine the complexities of growing up in such a situation. Jack also had another daughter named Lorraine from another affair during his relationship with Angelica. Her mother was Rebecca Broussard, who was actually an actress in one of Jack's films, The Two Jakes. Talk about drama both on and off the screen. And the surprises don't stop there. Actress Susan Anspach even claimed that Jack Nicholson might be the father of her son, Caleb Goddard. It seems like Jack's life was just as dramatic and intriguing as the movies he starred in. But despite his issues about his parentage, Jack Nicholson didn't allow himself to become a victim of his past. Over the years, he healed from whatever trauma the situation may have caused him and went on to create an amazing career. Today, Jack Nicholson is known as a renowned American actor, filmmaker, and producer who has left an indelible mark on the world of cinema. Nicholson's career spans several decades, and he is celebrated for his versatility, intensity, and iconic performances across a wide range of genres. He is perhaps best known for his captivating portrayals of complex and morally ambiguous characters. One of his most iconic roles came in the 1975 film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where he played the rebellious and charismatic Randall McMurphy, a patient in a mental institution. This performance earned Nicholson his first Academy Award for Best Actor, solidifying his status as one of the greatest actors of his generation. But he didn't stop there. He kept on pouring into his craft and creating in a mind-blowing way. Another landmark role for Nicholson was in Stanley Kubrick's 1980 horror classic The Shining, where he delivered a chilling and unforgettable performance as Jack Torrance, a writer driven to madness while serving as the winter caretaker of the haunted Overlook Hotel. Throughout his illustrious career, Nicholson has showcased his remarkable range in films such as Chinatown, Terms of Endearment, Batman, As Good as It Gets, and About Schmidt, among many others. Isn't it amazing that Jack Nicholson became everything he ever dreamed of becoming and never allowed his past to dictate his future? From his unconventional parentage to his colorful romantic life, Jack's story is one that keeps people captivated. Who would have thought that behind that iconic smile lay such a fascinating tale? Allegra Houston. If you asked young Allegra Houston who her dad was, she would tell you that he was none other than the famous director, John Huston. Why? Because for as long as she could remember, he was the man she called Dad. But as she grew older, she became uncertain and began to wonder if Huston was really her father. Born on the 26th of August, 1964, Allegra was the product of an affair her mother Enrica had with John Julius Norwich, the Viscount of Norwich. However, Allegra grew up believing that she was the daughter of the famous film director John Huston. Growing up, Allegra had no doubt that John Huston was her biological father. She was raised in a world where she thought she was part of his family, with siblings who shared the same name. But her life took a surprising turn when she discovered the truth about her parentage. It wasn't until later in life that Allegra learned about her true biological father and the circumstances surrounding her birth. Her mother, Enrica, was married to John Huston for several years, but in the early 1960s, they had a major marital problem, and they became estranged. It was during this period that Enrica began an affair with John Norwich. Their affair would later lead to her getting pregnant and giving birth to Allegra. Tragically, her mother, Enrica, passed away in a car accident in 1969, and Allegra was only 4 years old at the time. Despite the loss, John Huston stepped in and raised Allegra as his own daughter, showing immense love and devotion. A lot of people were shocked that he raised someone else's child like his old child. Imagine the emotions Allegra must have felt when she discovered the truth. How did she react? How did she come to terms with having two fathers and two sets of siblings? These are questions that likely ran through her mind as she navigated this complex family dynamic. Allegra eventually found solace in writing her autobiography, Love Child, a memoir of family lost and found. In this memoir, she didn't hold back as she delved into her unique upbringing, exploring the complexities of her identity as both American and English, and the challenges she faced growing up with this secret. But Allegra has not allowed her past to define her. She is now a successful writer, carving her own path in the world of literature. Despite the challenges she faced, she has embraced her past while building a fulfilling future of her own.